Welcome, friends, to the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And this week we are back with another bonus episode being released to the main feed, a From the Vault episode. This one dating back to August of 2020 when we covered Pet Sematary 2.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, directed by Mary Lambert, who directed the first Pet Sematary in 1989 or something like that.
Right, which was another bonus thing we did on Patreon, but is now on the main feed as well. Because for our actual coverage, we did the new Pet Sematary, but this kind of rounded it out because I think a lot of people remember this movie, and it was definitely an interesting one to talk about. I won't spoil it. Definitely listen to it. I felt like we had fun with this one though, if memory serves. Do you want to share why we are releasing another bonus episode from the Vault episode and not doing the next Emma episode, which is what is on deck?
Sure, yeah. We are going to get to that next week, but this week, and really this half of this month, and maybe more, I've been filming on a feature film that I'm really excited about. Can't wait to see where it goes. I've had so much fun, and it's using new technology and like kind of cutting edge stuff. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's cool, man. So I do want to give a quick plug for our Patreon because our Emma coverage we're doing right now, and I think I forgot to mention this last episode, was the selection of our patrons. It won the poll. We have a suggestion post right now that anyone can view. If you sign up for Patreon, you can comment on it. Once you comment on it, and you don't have to pay anything to comment on it, but you do have to sign up, I think, if I'm understanding this correctly. But you can comment suggestions, and then people can vote on it. And we're going to use that pool to determine our polls for the future, for this year at least, I think, for the following quarterly polls. And once we go to that quarterly poll selection, we'll take like the top 3 or 4 titles that have the most votes, and we will put that on a final poll that will be voted on by patrons. That was how Emma got selected, and will be how the next one gets selected. So if you're dying to have us talk about something in particular, that would be the best way to do it. We also record monthly bonus episodes like the one you're about to hear, but up to date. And those are over on there. And we are about to record one on Andy Weir's short story, The Egg, and the 2 sort of adaptations we were able to find on it, which are both short film type deals. Very cool story. We haven't talked about it yet, so I can't tell you what that's going to be like. But if you want to hear that as soon as it comes out, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, and enjoy Pet Sematary 2. This week we're talking about Pet Sematary 2, directed by Mary Lambert.
Yep.
And I'm just going to start by saying this movie's wacky.
Yeah, man. I had quite an experience with this. I mean, I guess it does remind me a little bit of the first Pet Sematary because that movie was out there too. The original, this is the sequel to the 1980s Pet Sematary. And yeah, this movie is like, now you wanted dead animals, now we got more dead animals. You wanted blood, now we got more blood. You want dead people, we got even more dead people. It's like everything is just cranked and over the top. It's pretty wild. Yeah.
Faster and more intense.
Yeah.
That's what they wanted with this movie. I'm sure that was a lot of direction.
Yeah, you wanted a dead cat, now we got a ton of dead kittens, and a ton of dead
honestly,
rabbits.
like the animal, any animal lover should not watch this movie because
it was tough.
I like animals a lot. I'm a big animal, but like I feel like I'm not the person to say like I'm going to turn the movie off, but this movie was really off-putting, especially the first like half or so.
Oh man,
there's just a lot of dead animals.
In my notes. Yeah, I was like
euthanizing one of the dogs in the beginning was just brutal. I was like, God damn, they're just doing this to hurt us. It's not even
right at the start. We're going to start off with a vet euthanizing an animal, which, like, I know that it is kind of in keeping with Pet Sematary. Like, Pet Sematary had that stuff, but it just was it was like handled with a certain level, and now I'm referring to the book. It was handled with a certain level of care. Like, Stephen King knew he was hitting hard. He's like, these are big emotional haymakers I'm throwing, but I'm going to do them with intention. This was just like, we're going to come out swinging from the jump.
There's a story reason to do it, like
exactly.
to set up some of that stuff. And there was just a euthanizing of a dog, an old dog, and they were like, it was a really sad scene where they were saying like, he lived a long, great life, and you're just like, this is never going to play a part in this movie.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It was, it established the fact that this guy's a vet, but he could have been a vet not euthanizing a dog.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so we should say, like, this movie is not very good. It has, like, some moments. If you're really into the Pet Sematary story, like, it could be worth checking out. But, we're going to spoil the hell out of it as we talk about it. But ultimately, like, yeah, I don't really recommend this movie for just, like, your average moviegoer or even your average horror fan unless you're really curious about it. Yeah, there were several parts I wanted to say where I would have turned this movie off, which is weird for me because I'm not normally the kind of person who would do that. Like we talked about, like, I would probably go through it, even though I'm a huge animal lover. But yeah, it was like they were daring you to, like, they're like, you're going to turn this off now, right?
It was like, can you handle this? Or you, like, they were like trying to, and that's a lot of the movie, like a lot of the sex. There's a rape scene, a lot of the gore. It's all just like, how shocking and how intense can you handle? And like, it feels very of the time in that way. Yeah,
it was, it's interesting because it came out in what, 92 we were talking about?
92, yeah.
And, it does feel like that early 90s wave where it seemed like they were trying to take things that were being done in the 80s and see if they could, like, do it just even more. Like, everything about it is just even more. I'm thinking about, like, Total Recall that we covered. Yeah, Total Recall is actually a good movie, whereas this is not, in my opinion. But there's, like, a similar, like, effort to just do the stuff that you've seen before at a level in which you've never imagined possible. It's full, like, gore and shock and everything.
Yeah. I was ready to the first half of this movie. I was like, this is so forgettable. I will never remember any of these details. This is gonna fade from my memory really quickly.
Yeah.
And I'll give them credit. Like, they made it weird enough in the second half for me to remember it. Like,
that's true.
It's fucking weird and like. It didn't see a lot of the things coming.
Some of the scenes that happened are, just bonkers. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. So I guess if that's interesting to you, then maybe you'd want to check it out.
An interesting Clancy Brown role as Gus, the cop. Like, I think, like, he got to really ham it up and be like the ultimate villain, bad guy, and do all this crazy shit, like torture, kill kids, and
shoots
kill
a dog.
Animals.
Like, he's like ripping the heads off
rabbits' fur off of, just madness.
I don't even want, like, I'm kind of scared to ask if you did any research into the behind the scenes, because, like, I almost don't want to know, because, like, there were scenes where they were like, whenever they were touching the dog, I was like, don't touch that dog, to, like, the actor. Like, I'm like, don't you dare touch that dog, because it looked like they were just, like, being rough with that animal. Like, when they would go to put him up on the table and stuff, or anytime the Gus character was interacting with the, like, actual dog, he would, like, grab him by the neck, and I was like, damn, they're being really fucking rough with that dog.
So I definitely don't think they were being nice to animals, but I think there were certain steps that were taken, because I know that, like, some of the dogs were trained. They had some, like, specifically, what's the moment? They had the dog trained to, like, recoil, like, sort of act like it was getting hurt by something when clearly they're not hurting it to incite that reaction.
Okay.
But then again, all the other stuff that you see, there's stuff that you see that's, like, blatantly obvious they're doing it to animals. And I don't know if it's, like, the time, but I know, I will say, like, sort of more, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess, like, I can see, like, an old timey, and this isn't, this is the 90s, so it's not that old timey, but I can see, like,
it's
older
almost 30
generation.
years ago now.
I can see an older generation being, like, rougher with animals, like grab them by the scruff of the neck and like grab, stuff like that. So I'm not saying any of it's forgiven in any way, but, like, I feel like even there were other movies at the time that were treating animals the same way, which isn't good, and by today's standards is bad. But
I mean, it's bad by any standards, but I see what you're getting at. I mean, it's just rough to watch, though, in my opinion.
They weren't hurt. I would say, like, from what I could find, no animals were actually hurt, and like, but then again, I don't know if it was reported, I don't know.
Yeah,
what.
Like, how, that's what they said. I don't know, man. It's tough to see, like, you're looking at it on the screen and you're like, I'm seeing what they're actually doing to this dog right now, or to this cat, and it doesn't look great. I mean, I remember there was a scene where the one bully kid was he was riding a bike and he was going, like, really fast, and he was holding the kitten in, like, one hand, like, by the scruff. And I was like, that's a real kitten for sure, and this guy's really holding it in one hand while he's on this bike. Like, it just seems dangerous, man.
Oh yeah, moments like that. I was thinking about when that same bully shows up on the dirt bike later, and then the other kid is on his bike.
Yeah.
They have shots that are like tracking shots that are going with clearly the camera and everything's on a car in front of them, but they're like slamming into each other, and then they get far enough from the camera to where you can see like there's no sort of platforms or anything that they're sitting on. Like they're actually slamming into each other and stuff. And I'm like, those were the actors because you see their face and stuff.
Yeah.
And like maybe they made it to look faster than they were actually going, but like there's like on a dirt bike and a bicycle slamming into each other and stuff, like all kinds of like safety.
It looked like a very physical set for sure, or shoot for sure. What is the name of that actor, by the way? I think he plays Jeff. He is the Terminator 2 kid. It's just the only thing I could assign him in my.
I mean, as soon as I saw him, I was like, holy shit, Terminator 2. His name is Edward Furlong.
Okay, Edward Furlong. Yeah, I mean, do you know where this falls? Like, is this before or after Terminator 2?
No, it was after Terminator 2. So they were capitalizing on the. That's sort of why they went with him.
It's interesting because his performance reminds me of how like he's kind of I don't know, like he ends up winning you over in that movie Terminator 2 I'm talking about. But I remember he always seemed kind of whiny and like sometimes the emotional beats felt a little off, but then you kind of like make it out to be that's just how the character is or something. Like you can kind of forgive it and make it work. But it is like on full display in this movie. Like his emotional beats just felt way off to me. And then there was some really rough scenes with the kids acting with each other that I just didn't believe at all.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. There's something about the like almost nonstop like brooding because I know he's hurt because he lost his mother and I get that, but then the brooding turns into like evil or something like near the end of the movie. Like
the Jeff character, I don't know what the fuck happens with him at the end of the movie. He goes off the deep end. He starts like he starts having him do this like smile, like weird smile all the time, and I guess it's supposed to be creepy. But
I guess I like we're meant to think that he's brooding so much he's already on the edge, and then this like losing his friend. Which again, children dying. Like I get that that's a Stephen King thing, but these weren't like Georgie dying in like it. Like these were kind of different scenes. Like a full on car crash killed a wife, like a mother and a child, and I was like,
I couldn't
what the
believe
fuck?
That happened. There's something that happens in this movie that I can't believe happens.
I was shocked.
Oh, we should say, by the way, I think we're getting well into it. We forgot to say this is our bonus episode number 27, covering Pet Sematary 2. Thank you for being patrons. We really appreciate it, especially this year with all the crazy shit going on in the world and in America, and specifically, if you're an American patron. Thank you so much for sticking with us through all this, and to any new patrons for joining us. It really means a lot, and it does help the show continue. I mean, it's our lifeblood at this point.
It really is, yeah. So thank you guys so much. You're our foundation here. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about Mary Lambert, and you mentioned Jeff and as the main character. Mm-hmm. In an interview, Mary Lambert commented that the real reason she wanted to make this sequel was, I really wanted to get into the idea of what goes on in a teenage boy's head, on why they do stupid things. Because that's the kind of stupid thing a teenage boy would do. Louis Creed buries his son because of an intense desire, a feeling of guilt that it's his fault that the boy died. But Edward Furlong's character brings Clancy Brown in Pet Sematary because he's a teenage boy and he's stupid. For teenage boys, the blood is not going to their brain, it's going somewhere else. And I was like...
Seems a little reductive, but okay.
Yeah, a little bit. But I was like, so you want to make a movie around a stupid character and stupid actions? Like, is an audience going to buy into this with you?
We're going to make a movie about a stupid character doing stupid things that don't make any sense. Yeah. And that's kind of what this is. Hey, and I actually have a note at one point where I'm like, who is the main character of this movie? Because I couldn't figure out if it was supposed to be Jeff, was it supposed to be his father? Was it supposed to be the stepson of Gus? Like at different points in time, I sort of empathize with all of them, but also all of them do terrible shit. Like that makes me not like them at all. And then they also just like come and go from the narrative as far as like feeling like we're close to them. So I felt really disconnected from the story, and I really struggled to get into that for that reason, because I couldn't root for anybody or empathize with anybody or relate to anybody. And I'm not saying you have to do that in every movie.
Well, yeah.
But I want to do like one of those things for somebody.
Right. I think you were saying like you kind of empathize with all of them. And I think that really encapsulates how I felt about it. Like, yeah, like I kind of empathize
not
with,
really,
but well, this is the thing. At different times, I empathize with people for different reasons, but there's not enough of one character for me. Like basically, there's not enough good in any characters or enough of an interesting arc going on in any of the characters for me to latch onto. So it's kind of just like a clusterfuck. Like it's just like a lot of characters doing a lot of weird things.
Well, and they were trying to do. There's this like subplot of like a high school drama playing out,
Right.
but if I don't like any of the people involved, it really struggles. I really struggled to I don't know, be interested in it. And then the bully was so over the top. Like the first time we meet the bully, he's like snatching the kitten and running off, and like just the lines were so cheesy and over the top. And I know all of these characters have like a certain resemblance to a Stephen King character you might get. There's like a little bit of a Henry Bowers going on, but it's just not earned in the way that King does with those characters usually,
Yeah. This movie, I did feel a lot like they were just trying to do the greatest hits of Stephen King and like bring back Pet Sematary. And this movie feels so of the generation that they were making this movie not to be like a big theater smash hit or anything. They made this for kids and teenagers who were going to watch it on VHS in their house.
Yeah.
And so that's why they were like,
experience it, honestly.
yeah, and that's why they went in. They were like, all these kids are gonna watch this at a sleepover. So like, go hardcore with the nudity, with the gore, with the like just go hardcore with everything. Yep. And they're gonna walk away saying like, that was the craziest movie I've ever seen.
Well, and whenever at this point, whenever I hear something that is like directly related to Halloween and a horror movie, I'm like, they're trying to tap into that audience, right? Like they want this to become a horror staple that will be played, on Halloween. It probably came out near Halloween for all I know.
Probably.
Oh, so I wanted to ask, is this the same director from the first Pet Sematary?
It is, which is interesting. So there's that consistency in director, but there's not like, and I will give credit where credit's due. This movie, it didn't feel like they skimped on it. Like there were like large shots that would be like sweeping, and there were shots that surprised me in this movie.
I agree. I had a note where I said, it's not like this movie is necessarily poorly directed. I just kind of disagree with the decisions that were made in the story, but like there was stuff that looked good, and like I found myself feeling nostalgic for this time period in my life, because like I was approximately this kid's age, maybe a little bit younger, I guess, in the early 90s. So this like felt super familiar for me and was like a nostalgia trip, and you don't really get that unless you are shooting something pretty well, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's obvious moments of like effects not working, and like some of the acting is like sort of stale. Like, oh my God, the actress death scene in the beginning of the movie where she's getting shocked was what a way to open a movie. Like that's how you're going to open up your movie with like
kill the mom, kill a dog. They're just killing everything at the start of the movie.
But it was so comical. It felt like a cartoon. Like they were like, oh, there's a pool of water on the ground and we knocked over the electricity and it's going to shock everybody.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you how you felt about that, because it's like a movie set, right? And then it's like they keep setting up, like they're showing this fucking generator like sitting in a pool of water, and there's water pouring on all the people on set. And I don't know. I mean, everything was like over the top and ham-handed, I guess. It's like, this isn't a subtle movie, and I guess it's almost not fair to try and say like it should have been more subtle, because like that's not what they were going for. This movie knew what it was.
Right. I mean, like anytime, I think every filmmaker wants to put a scene of filmmaking in their movie. You know what I mean? So given the opportunity, that's what you're going to write. You write what you know. So they're going to write. That was
her making fun of movie making process? Probably
something like that. Maybe not even making fun. Maybe just like having a scene that they felt was fun.
Having fun, I guess, is a better way to put it. Yeah.
Right. I've said before, like I enjoy it as a movie fan. Like I like to see the self-awareness. Like I like to see the filmmaker at least be interested in film. Like I love a filmmaker who loves film. So anytime that you can be like, oh, I want to put the thing I love into a movie, and it's kind of meta in that way.
Were you like empathizing with the guy under the set, like getting water rained on him? You're like, no, I don't want to be that guy.
No, I mean, I felt bad for him, I would say, but yeah, that was such a like I said, cartoonish set. Like it's like it's not really like that unless you're on some like janky weird set that like isn't not union, and it's like under the table and that kind of stuff. Like you're not going to see stuff like that go down, really. But
Yeah,
that looked like a bigger production. That looked
well,
like
and it was called like Haunted Castle 2 or something, right? Like I feel like they were trying to be over the top on purpose. When they started the movie with it, I'm like, this has to be fake because there's no way this is like in fiction that she was walking down. Yeah, but it could have been by the end of this. Like it could have been because this movie gets wild.
What if they had opened and sort of been like the reason for the Pet Sematary, and they did like a whole historic element to like set it all up and everything.
Yeah,
like to show like why the land is cursed and why the Native Americans, and also just a dated thing that was like rough every time they said Indian instead of Native American was rough, and I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, part of that is like I feel like we've learned. I mean, I'm sure that it was people knew back then, but it's one of those things. It's just like certain terms are like at a certain point we all kind of agree that's not really what we're gonna say anymore, and then it just goes away. And that hadn't really happened to that point.
Culture just understands at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, there were movies like Indian in the Cupboard and stuff that were coming out around the same time as this. So it's just like I think it's like I don't think people are being hateful. It was just sort of oblivious or like
how weird is it that the vet in this movie has like a housekeeper. He drives around in like a animal van. He'll like come do house calls. Like the depiction of what the vet does and what their life is like seemed really out of touch with reality.
This is a vet from like 1820. This is a vet that does like house calls and stuff. Like there are vets who do that.
But sure, but he like drives up in his van at like the middle of the night, like he's an ambulance driver who's shown up to like treat the dog at one point, and then he's like, "Will you take the dog home and care for him?" And he's like, "Sure." Like what?
Yeah,
vets don't take dogs home and care for them for people. What are we talking about?
So, before I forget this, Mary Lambert said that the original concept for the film would have involved Ellie Creed as the central character, the only survivor from the first film. But Paramount wasn't confident in having a teenage girl lead the film, so they wrote the new story with new characters and a male protagonist. But the references were there, right? Like they kept wanting to drop in like, oh, and then Ellie, the only survivor, and then can you believe Creed did this? And
yeah, she went mad and she like was in an asylum or something, right? And and she hacked up her grandparents or something and like all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. Why don't we see any of that?
Yeah, right.
That's why apparently studio.
Yeah, seems like it.
So I wanted to touch on something you said earlier about how this was like Stephen King greatest hits. I definitely felt that way. There's a scene that I felt like it was a direct homage to The Shining, right? Like he literally busts through a door,
totally.
shoves his head in and says something. He doesn't say, here's Johnny, but he basically says a quippy line. And anytime that happens in a movie, I'm like, that's a reference to The Shining. And you're also doing a Stephen King sequel, so like it has to be.
Well, that's not even to mention that you're also, as a filmmaker, referencing Kubrick at that point. You know what I mean? So, like, as much as Stephen King wants to distance himself from that adaptation, the Shining adaptation, one of the most iconic things of Stephen King's work that's been adapted is that. So it's funny. Yeah. I mean, like, I appreciated the reference, and I'm sure for that time it was like a lot more. It hadn't been done completely to death like it has now. So I appreciate it for what it was. I think
it leads me to a larger point I wanted to make, because like we've done a few of these adaptation sequels now, where it's a sequel to a movie that wasn't an adaptation, but the sequel is not adapted from anything. It's just a sequel to that. So like we did like Jaws 2 was an example of this, right? Mm-hmm. The Thing, right? Like that. I guess that's kind of a sequel, though I guess it's more of a prequel. But again, it was sort of not a direct adaptation, and it is it does play into the point I'm trying to make. It feels like they are just doing this like echo. It's like we're going to make a movie that is this kind of hollow echo of the first movie that was so iconic.
Yeah. When I see stuff like this, it's just diminishing returns. Like you're asking for diminishing returns. You want people to the nostalgia, you want the name recognition, and like you're going to get diminishing returns, but you want to make it because they're going to put butts in seats, just the recognition.
Now, part of that is, I think, a sequel problem, right? Like a sequel to any big movie might have this issue, but it can be overcome. I do think there's something to be said for the fact that it's an adaptation sequel, because when I go see an adaptation, it feels in a weird way like the book is the soul of the thing I'm seeing, like metaphorically. You know, like maybe it looks way different, yet deep in there somewhere there's this material that is at its core in some way, and it's being reflected through the adaptation. And when you make a sequel that has no source material, you just get this like hollow echo. And to me, it feels kind of soulless. And I felt that way with this movie. Like when it's doing all these huge things, it didn't feel earned, and it felt like it was almost like mean. It was like they were trying to like shock you or offend you, and it didn't feel like there was any sort of heart to any of this. Whereas I still kind of felt that in Pet Sematary. As much as that is a super dark King story, there's some heart there still.
I think what it ultimately comes down to is like understanding the story you want to tell. I think in this case, they didn't have necessarily a super strong story to tell. Yeah. It was more just that they wanted, like you said, they wanted to give more of the same.
Well, and there's all these beats that echo too the first time, right? Like they always do that.
And imagine a Pet Sematary sequel that is like a deconstruction of the first one. I think that would, you know what I mean? Like if you're doing the same thing and just echoing, you know, like I said, you're going to get diminishing returns, but that, you know, you can make something that's a sequel that does sort of things differently, surprises you, subverts expectations, that sort of thing. And like that, you know, I don't think this movie did that at all. I think it was basically just like, let's take the overall framework of King's story and then maybe try to do some different stuff at the end.
Yeah, it's like if they're going to subvert your expectations, they're doing it in the opposite way you would think, by making it just more extreme. Because if I had predicted what this movie was going to be like, it would have been a lot like this, you know? If I had to like outline it, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably going to hit a lot of the same beats. It's going to be way over the top. It's going to be a lot more intense. There's going to be more of it. And it's going to be more graphic. All of that is true. And the way that it's different is just that it's more bonkers, I guess, is some of the more surprising stuff. It's just like how weird the emotional notes are, how the characters behave so bizarrely. All of that stuff, I guess, was kind of different.
Yeah, like early on, they really want you to think that the mother dies and then the kid is going to bring the mother back right away.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I think that was like the only subversion they really did from the first story. Because like in the first story, you're bringing the thing that the person or the thing that or the animal that dies is being brought back, and then this is basically just like everything's going to die and who's going to be brought back. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I was like when the kid and his mom died in the car crash, I was like, well, are they going to get brought back? You know, like that was like sort of their main thing is like, you know, kill a bunch of people, bring some of them back, and
almost everybody does get brought back. Yeah. So I think Jaws 2 is a great example of what I'm talking about, and I was thinking about that movie a lot for this movie too. And then I thought there was a fun sort of connection where one of the zombies at the end essentially gets killed by shoving an electric wire in its mouth, which is the same way that the Jaws 2 shark gets killed.
Yeah,
that was a funny, like, apparently if you make a sequel to an iconic movie, although I don't know, was Pet Sematary 1 iconic? Maybe. But still, like, the fact that you're going to kill the main villain with a big electric cable to the mouth, I don't know if that was a reference or anything. I actually don't know where this movie came out in relation to Jaws 2, but anyway, I just thought it was funny.
I would think Jaws 2 would have come out first, but I can't remember the date on it anymore because Jaws came out so much before Pet Sematary 1, but you never know.
Yeah, you're right. It had to have come out before this, right? Anyway.
Must have. But yeah, electrocuting, I think that was also sort of a horror trope that's gone away for sure. But like electrocuting things was like the sure way to kill it. It's like, you can't burn it, you can't do this and that. For some reason, electrocution will do it.
Because it's got the like veneer of technology or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
What about all the taxidermied animals in this? Like there was a scene with the pug eyes getting popped out. And I'm like, I think is that a real taxidermied body of a dog that I'm looking at right now? Because I don't
probably
know that. It probably
was.
I
think they were.
And remember when he was carrying the dog out to bury it? I was like, that looks like a real fucking dog. Like I'm like, they didn't make that. It must have been a taxidermied animal, but it was so loose. It wasn't like stiff like I'd expect one.
I'm not sure. I think
like, did they knock the dog out and have him carry it?
No way they did that. I'm pretty sure that was. I'm pretty sure it was a fake dog. Like I don't know. They didn't show it.
It looked pretty real if it was, but maybe it was.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to talk about because this was something that stuck with me with all the versions of this story is I still think we haven't seen an adaptation. You know, obviously that really captures what Stephen King was going for. Even the first Pet Sematary, while good and classic in its own. Well, you know. It's a decent movie. I'm not going to say it's good, but I have fond memories of it.
It was fun in a way that this movie isn't, in my opinion. Right. Like it's like similar, but it had a soul to it that made it more fun than this.
Right. We still haven't seen I think the version of the story that could be told, but at this point,
I agree.
I don't know if we'll see it. But there is something that lives on through all of this, and that's I Don't Want to Be Buried in a Pet Cemetery by the Ramones. Because that was the song that was at the end of the original Pet Sematary. And then there's I think there's another Ramones song at the end of this movie. I was listening. I didn't like fully check, so if somebody knows, fact check me. But there's another Ramones sounding song at the end of these credits, and then the song was redone. The original Pet Sematary song was redone for the eventual remake that we saw in like 2017 or whatever it was.
I think it was 2019.
2018? 2019? I don't know.
What are years anymore?
Yeah, I know, right?
It was from the before times. That's what I know.
Yeah. That song is just like, it's bad, but like, God damn it, I kind of love it. It's such a bad song.
Well, this was reminding me of the conversation we just had about the old guard, because I was noticing the fact that this was like a movie sound, like the soundtrack to this movie, for the most part, was a bunch of like real songs with lyrics, blatantly saying like, I want to be dead like Jesus, I want to be dead like JFK, and like the lyrics to it were like directly relating to things. I'm like, okay, this does feel kind of like a music video. Damn it, James, you've ruined this for me now.
Sorry, man.
It's okay. I will say though, like early on, I don't know if it's part of the same songs or not, but when it was more instrumental, I actually thought it sounded pretty good. It kind of reminded me of like a 90s ballad. And I felt like it actually fit the tone and it fit the time period. It was when the words came in that weren't great.
Yeah. And like, I'm all for diegetics. Like if they turn the radio on and the song's playing or whatever, like that makes more sense to me. And I feel like that is like sort of there's more effort put into like getting that song in the movie.
Yeah. Cause it's in fiction. Yeah.
Right. Like I'm fine with that kind of stuff. It's just like, sometimes it's kind of jarring to hear. And then other times it works. So it's really just like a subjective thing.
How about the fucking dog head woman that keeps showing up? It's like his mom with a fucking dog head on.
Oh, and then was the cop trying to have sex with the rabbits? Because like he was like obviously like a perverted sexual being in general.
He was looking at him,
but, like they were like humping and stuff, and he was like, oh yeah, he was like getting into it and stuff. And
that
then,
Gus character, man, everything about him was so terrible. I was like, they really made me hate this fucking guy.
Yeah. Yeah, but the weird,
the dog. Like even before he shot the dog, I was like already on fuck this guy to the moon. Like it was wild.
Yeah, but the weird dog head and everything, like that's the stuff that it doesn't really work. But like, I mean, props for trying to go weird.
It was kind of funny though. Like, if I look at this movie as something that you can like laugh at, then I guess it can work in that way. Like, and I will admit, I think this movie knew what it was. Like, I think Mary Lambert knew what she was making when she made this movie.
And it sounds like what she wanted to make wasn't gonna work out, and she didn't want to not be attached to the project because she directed the first one, so she was kind of just like, let's make it work.
Yeah, and let's just make it wild.
Yeah.
Seems like. So the point I was going to make, there was a scene where Jeff wakes up from a nightmare where he sees his mom sitting in the rocking chair looking at him, and then he wakes up and he's all startled and he looks over and it's instead the dead dog who's come back and it's sitting in a rocking chair.
Yeah. And that's more normal.
That's fucking place. And he goes like, okay, no big deal. And he lays back
I can go back to sleep. Yeah. It's insane. Because he's like, oh yeah, that's more normal. That's more my speed.
I don't know why I was worried about it.
Yeah. And it's like growling and its eyes are like gleaming orange.
The dead
and stuff.
zombie dog is growling at me and sitting in a rocking chair. That's normal. Oh man. So funny.
Yeah.
And then there is a zombie rape scene that was pretty off-putting, and I was surprised to see that in this movie. But
rough. It was.
I mean, I guess it's not super explicit, but man, it kind of goes there a little bit.
Well, regardless of how explicit it was like very much a rape scene, like hardcore rape scene, and I was like, this sucks.
Yeah, no good.
It was bad, man. It was just weird and crazy, and like I think shocking for the sake of being shocking.
And that's one of the things I'm saying when I struggle to just have fun with this movie. It's that it's like seeing something like that, or seeing a dog being put down, or seeing a dog be shot, and like knowing that they're handling real animals, like. All of those reasons are going to keep me from actually being able to have fun with this movie. Because I'm all for a fun gore fest if I can actually have fun with it.
Like it's shocking to say the least, but then it also leaves you with like that bad taste in your mouth where you're just like, ew, that wasn't enjoyable for anyone.
Yeah, it just makes you feel bad, which is not good generally. Yeah. What about the fucking blue sex scene? We talked, everything goes blue. He's having sex with his wife. Turns out she has a dog head. Then he wakes up and the dog's on him, and she is a dog. And then she bites him, or the dog bites him, and it's real, and like he pulls out a gun and shoots at it, and he's like, oh, that dog. But like, it never transitioned out of the blue dream. There was instead just blue light in the room for some unknown reason. Mm-hmm. So weird, man. Like the language of the movie just didn't make sense. It was literally nonsensical.
Yeah, very weird. Like I said, there's like a weird like sexual vibe to the animals in this. Like I don't understand why like animals are being associated with human sex and stuff. Like it's just it's like off-putting again to add another thing to the pile.
What is with the giant walk-in attics in like horror movies? Why is there always fucking
so classic?
Huge.
I mean, I always wanted one growing up.
It'd be cool, I guess. It's got a like fucking regular door to it. There's just like wispy like curtains blowing through it at all times, and like what is with these attics, man? I just don't get it. We saw some other movie recently that had an attic like this, didn't we? It was probably it was The Exorcist. That's what it was. There's like a pretty massive attic in that movie too.
Yep.
It's just so schlocky, but like I can do schlocky. This just didn't quite strike that tone that makes it fun.
And again, I like all the things we've said against it. I'll give it credit that it was weird as hell. So I'll remember it for that. You know,
certainly was. Fucking, he takes a screwdriver, like a power tool, and drills it into the guy's arm at one point. He walks in, and the whole house has been transformed, and there's just fires burning. There's fires burning in like
the last
like 3 or 4 different big scenes. There's just random fires.
Crazy. Oh, and then how can we forget his mother like burning to death at the end and like dad is better. She
seems fucking paralyzed for some reason because she's just standing there, not moving, and yelling at them.
Yeah, it looks like she's melting like wax too.
Yeah, but there's even a weird scene where he's getting ready to go, and you can just see her legs as she's standing up on the bed, not moving. And I'm like, what is happening? And then the dead is better line. I actually kind of hated it because it was deliberately trying to be an inversion. But I don't like that you're doing that. It's like don't fuck with that line. Like when he says dead is better in the original Pet Sematary, sometimes dead is better. He's saying that like sometimes it's okay to let something be dead and not try and resurrect it. And I think metaphorically, like trying to in your mind relive things. It's like sometimes it's okay to move on. So it has like all this emotional layering to it. And instead here it's like flipping it around. It's like sometimes dead is better. Come join me.
Calling people to kill themselves almost or be dead as well. It's like really weird way to
it completely undercuts the original line and the original message behind it.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, it was still kind of fun. I don't know. I will say it was tough. I was watching the movie with like both my dogs around me, and I'm like constantly reaching over and petting them. I'm like, I'm really sorry about this. I feel bad.
It was I don't know. Like I said, that first half, I think I would have turned the movie off.
I would have too.
But the second half is weird enough to like have it be, I guess, worth having seen. And I agree. Like I don't think like anybody needs to run out and see it, but if you're a big horror fan and you kind of want to know what it would be like, because I've seen plenty of worse horror movies than this even. So like
if you're into like extreme horror too, you know, like just gore fest and stuff, because I think that's kind of what this movie turns into. I mean, it is what it turns into, in my opinion. So if you're into that, you might find it interesting. Just know that the movie doesn't have much of a soul to it, so it's in my opinion, it's kind of rough. But that's Pet Sematary 2. I do feel like I know more about Pet Sematary now, though. Like, you know, the universe, all the things that have been made about Pet Sematary, I feel more complete.
And like, I don't like this movie, but something about watching this made me want to also go watch another movie I don't like, which was the remake of Pet Sematary, and see if there were any sort of if the filmmakers for the new Pet Sematary saw Pet Sematary 1 and 2 and saw the sequel and maybe threaded in a couple of like references in there, sort of head nods or something. Like, I don't know if it would be worth going back to watch it for that reason, but maybe.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, they might have threaded some stuff in there. It does give me. It was weird that we covered Pet Sematary in a way in which we didn't watch these movies before covering the new one, because it does feel like a big piece of the puzzle was missing for us, you know what I mean? Of like the Zeitgeist puzzle.
I see what you're saying, yeah. I mean, like, I had seen the original. I feel like I was like a pretty average Pet Sematary viewer, so like I think people going in had like the memory of it like I did, and sort of, I think I even remembered the original Pet Sematary.
You mentioned it. You mentioned it. I do recall that.
Yeah, but I think I remember it being better than even when we went to do our rewatch for Patreon, like it even was.
Well, it doesn't surprise me considering when
Yeah.
the movie was made and what kind of movie it was. But in general, this was fun covering it. At least led to a good conversation. I enjoyed that. Hopefully, you guys had fun with this bonus episode. If you haven't seen the movie, probably don't need to now. You've probably heard enough about it, unless you're curious. And stay safe out there.